All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for this. I'm really glad to have so many of the project teams in the same Zoom room. We haven't had a conversation like this since I've been involved, I don't think. So I'm really excited to see so many faces. Today, we'll be talking about how you as a project leader or project team member can leverage Citizen Science Month, which is April, for 1 million Access Science as well, and to increase your awareness of your project and participation in that project as well. So I'll go ahead and get us moving and tell you all a little bit about what we're going to be talking about. Since you have access to the chat, I would love it if you introduce yourself, just name and what project you're representing, and you can mention if you've participated in Citizen Science Month before. I would love to know who all is more familiar versus not so much, and what projects we have online. So feel free to drop that into the chat. I'll even do an example here, or I'll just write that in the chat as well. So name, project, and if you have been involved in CSM for Cit Sci Month before, this is a reminder. Awesome. And I'm seeing some come in. Awesome. Yay. Hi, Elena. Hi, Carrie. Great to see you both. Hi, Christina. Awesome. Oh, right. Okay, Christina. Yes, we had just met. Sweet. Awesome. Sweet. All right. While you all are doing that, I'm excited to see who all is here. And I'll go ahead and keep this moving. So on the agenda today, we'll be doing an overview. So you'll be learning about the Association for Advancing Participatory Sciences. Jennifer Shirk is here to talk more about that and what is coming up in May. And then we'll go over, do an overview of SciStarter and Citizen Science Month for those of you who are on the more unfamiliar side of SciStarter and Citizen Science Month. We'll also talk about what happened this past a couple months ago in 2024 Citizen Science Month and what the highlights were and how that's affected our goals. So we'll talk about what the goals are for this time. And then we'll talk through opportunities for your projects and the next steps. So what you can do from now on if you choose to. So the world is your oyster. I'm excited to hear your thoughts and to hear what you all think about our plans for April too. So I'm going to pass the mic over to Jennifer to talk about AAPS.
Thanks so much, Emma, and hello, everybody. My name is Jennifer Shirk. I'm the Executive Director for the Association for Advancing Participatory Sciences. It's still a new name for us and a little bit of a mouthful. We use AAPS. Formerly, we were called the Citizen Science Association when we were formed a little over 10 years ago, and changed our name about a year ago now to reflect the broader range of terms that people use to describe related practices. Citizen science, crowdsourced science, community science, volunteer monitoring. These practices take place in all scientific disciplines, and they require the expertise and the input of so many people, from the volunteers involved to the lead teams who are designing and managing the projects. So we're excited to be a space where people who are leading and researching with and about these projects can connect to share information and best practices and to inspire each other about what can be done across this broad field. And we have services including a membership base. We're probably best known for our conferences, which we do now annually, in person and virtual alternating years. I'll say more about our upcoming in-person conference towards the end of this webinar. And we really have an inspired group of volunteer members who are working to push the frontiers of practices in different domains through working groups on everything from education to ethics, to diversity and inclusion, to data and metadata. It's a really vibrant community of folks who are engaged in making these practices the best they can be. I'll note as well that we have a journal and that we connect with sister associations around the world in support of that journal, which is free and open access to read, and a great source of information on new and emerging practices for work across this field. So excited to share more I'll stop there. You can find more on our website if you're interested, and I'm happy to connect with any and all of you through any of these outlets. Thanks so much, Emma.
Awesome. Thanks, Jennifer. If there are any questions about AAPS, feel free to drop them in the chat too. I'm sure Jennifer can scroll through and answer them as well. But I'm really excited for this after April for May for the conference. So we'll hear more from Jennifer later on too, more relevant to what's happening after Citizen Science Month too. So awesome. Okay. Thank you. All right. So talking about SciStarter and Citizen Science Month. For those of you who are unfamiliar, SciStarter.org is a globally acclaimed citizen science hub where millions of people find and connect with citizen science projects in need of their help. So I like to refer to it as a giant database and educational hub for folks who want to do citizen science and participate within the community of citizen science. And so we really love AAPS to be able to connect with the broader practitioner network too, to make sure that we can make connections between the two. And as a part of SciStarter, the reason I go with that definition too is because there is a lot of different stakeholders and parts to SciStarter. And the reason for mentioning this in context with you all is to also understand like what ways we can support you as your project and what avenues you have for reaching out to different groups of folks, whether that be our facilitators that exist or our other project leaders or the general public, or even researchers working on researching citizen science itself as a practice and how the behavior works. And we offer a lot of different resources for those folks in those stakeholder groups. So from free training modules, which if you've ever seen, we have a scistar.org/training will take you to a set of training modules that are self-guided and allow you to earn a badge that you can put on your LinkedIn. It has metadata specific to the skills you learned. Tara is dropping the links in the chat to correspond with these things too if you want to learn more. And we have a lot of resources, turnkey resources and customizable resources to support facilitators especially. But as project leaders, if you want to facilitate your own type of event, which we've seen in previous years of Citizen Science Month and elsewise, that is something that you can utilize as well. There is a lot on this page. If you have questions about any particular item, I'm happy to talk more in depth at it, but I will move on for now. We have a lot of partners. These are some of the partners that help us reach more people from all walks of life. We want to broaden our awareness or broaden the awareness of citizen and community science, and this is how we do it. We identify and support the facilitators we work with, and ultimately the goal is to just increase participation and awareness of citizen science writ large. A big partnership of ours that we work with that relates to our facilitator stakeholder too, is our libraries. Where we are essentially looking at them as the accessible, free, safe, and open spaces used and trusted by millions of people. So why not work with them to enable us to spread awareness of citizen science? And so we have about 1,000 libraries. You can look more in depth about our library program if you go to our scistar.org/libraries or library, excuse me. And these libraries receive professional development trainings and resources to host the events, like I mentioned, the turnkey resources. And they even circulate physical kits with tangible materials for projects, which is something that several projects have chosen to create in partnership with us, and librarians have made on their own, using their own choices for kit materials to make their own tangible version of doing a citizen science project based on what their community really enjoys. And so they have what they need, everything they need to really fully engage with their community and bring everyone in to do something that's very hands-on and in a supportive environment. And so we work with more partners than just libraries. Oftentimes, even in our library network, we have folks from like science centers and project leaders that sign up for our newsletter to stay in touch with those things. But this is a key one that we use for Citizen Science Month because they are super duper duper involved. They've asked for help in executing events and programs in their libraries. So over the past few years, we've been doing a lot of working with them to build facilitator capacity. And this past year, this past year, as in like several months ago, we launched our first ever SciStarter Ambassador program to acknowledge the barrier of needing additional people power, this additional support needed to actually facilitate events. And so our libraries now have access, and you have access to the SciStarter ambassadors that are a set of people who are going online and have completed trainings through SciStarter, are interested in citizen science, And a group of them, about 100 of them, have gone past that point where they've done the 2 trainings they need to really understand what it means to do citizen science and to facilitate it and use it in the community. And that other 100 are also background checked by us, meet with us for an orientation. They're available in a public database on our website that Tara just dropped into the chat as well, the ambassadors-directory link. So these are folks that you can actually look to and ask for assistance from them as well. Libraries will reach out to them to see if they can help facilitate their programs at various locations across the country. And they're being trained to mobilize and build awareness for citizen science months especially. And you'll hear later, I'll continue that topic on how you can use them for your projects to actually help push for your projects to be more made available to other libraries and other community centers too. This is a bit more about the ambassador program, so you know how it works. We are essentially building them to be champions of citizen science, connectors of resources to the resources to the community or the library, et cetera, and to be facilitators of these programs. So thinking through potentially helping someone use your project as a part of their facilitation in their community, if you want your project to be highlighted in anyone's event in a community, I want you to now think about whether or not that means there would be special considerations that the library might need to know. So if an ambassador were to say, I like your project and wants to do an event during Citizen Science Month, which is very possibly like a very real situation we're expecting for quite a few, they might reach out about what do they really need to know about. And so think about things like whether or not your project is outdoors or indoors, or if it matters what the weather conditions are, period, or if there's computers involved, if you need if you need to have Wi-Fi in order to do the project itself, et cetera. So if you have thoughts on that, feel free to drop in the chat too as just a general brainstorm, because we want to make sure these facilitators are prepared to bring your projects to light in their communities too. And I'll get farther into operationalizing this and why this is important in a little while. So each April, we celebrate the people, projects, and new this year outcomes. We're talking about outcomes a lot of citizen science. In doing so, we're aiming to increase awareness and engagement in your project specifically. And Citizen Science Month is and has been for the last few years supported by or made possible in general with support from the National Library of Medicine and others. And so we're partnered with, and then you'll see on the next slide, our big 3 of groups. So SciStarter itself and Arizona State University as the grant partner, and NNLM, National Library, or National Network of the National Library of Medicine. I always forget which one comes first, and the All of Us program to make it happen. So we experimented last year, if you recall, but some of you I saw in the chat, a lot of you were at the first contact for Citizen Science Month, so I'm backing up a tiny bit. Citizen Science Month being April is awesome. We've done that for a couple of years. We added 1 million acts of science, this big thing at the top, last year as an inaugural kind of experiment to see if it would help. And I'll talk about this a bit more, but essentially we anticipated and we saw people gravitate towards this idea of this collective goal. It was more motivating. An act of science was easier to grasp than trying to explain what citizen science is or participatory science is, volunteer science, et cetera. To get past the jargon, we wanted to make it very clear that it's just participating in science, and an act of science was a way to do that. So since we did that last year, we saw a lot of success, so we're going to stick with it. It'll happen again for this year if you were curious. And so if you're thinking about for your project, what is an act of science? It is definitely up to you. So an act of science in our definition is any type of participation in the citizen science and participatory sciences realm. And so I have a couple of examples here. Even attending an event would count, not the participation in the project. Playing games that help advance medical research, think stall catchers. So every categorization of whether or not a cell or a blood vessel is flowing or stalled, for example, in that game, every observation there is an act of science. And so you can kind of make your own way in terms of what you want an act of science to mean. And a bunch of you familiar faces did this last year and developed their own plan for what an act of science was for their project. And so question for you while you're thinking about it, if something comes to mind immediately for an act of science for your project, what would that be? Is it an observation? Is it a participation in a training? And then also sending in one data sheet? Is it, I'll go back to the other examples too. Sharing photos. So if your project works through iNaturalist, for example, every observation, what about those who are helping identify the species too? Those are potentially another act of science. All those things, think through what that might mean. And you can add them to the chat if you have immediate thoughts. And I'll keep us moving too, but I'll wait just in case we have another example. Tara, do you have any other examples in mind for other types of acts of science? They're usually related to.
Pollinators?
Sorry?
Is they counting pollinators?
Yeah, so counting pollinator, would that be for each pollinator, you think, or like the data sheet for that? Depends on
Probably
the project.
the data sheet, probably your submission. Well, depends. Depends on how many times you do it. So yeah, one per data sheet submission.
Yeah, instance of observation maybe is a good way to
Yes.
that too. Yeah.
Every image you upload to iNaturalist. This morning I'm in Philly. I was walking. One of the trees is in bloom, which is horrifying, truly. And yeah, I stopped and put it into iNaturalist because that is a observation that people need to know.
Definitely. Yeah, and I can think of a couple other projects that probably also would need that. Like Budverse would appreciate knowing that too. Jennifer in the chat, thank you. Mentioned in Did You Feel It? It's describing the experience of an earthquake. Yeah, it could just be like the personal description of what's happening. So in Did You Feel It? Or in Icy Change as well as another project where you can you're writing a description of the weather, essentially. You send a picture into and all these other measurements if you'd like, or to the extent that you can. But the main idea is that qualitative understanding, yeah. Sadie, I see your hands up. I can unmute you if you want to ask I think that works.
Can you hear me, Emma?
Yes.
I think the chat is disabled for participants right now.
Oh, that might be what's happening. Huh, that's very useful information. Thank you, Sadie. Let me see if I can fix that really fast. I don't see it on my list.
I just
Well,
fixed it for you.
oh, you're wonderful.
Should
Thank you.
work now. Yep.
Okay. Test. Anybody want to hit a test? Yay. Thank you, Sadie. And thank you, Jennifer. Man, I forgot where all the
Bizarre. How did that even happen? I have no
I
idea.
don't know. I must have hit
Maybe.
some random setting button when I tried to change the settings for the muting. Anyhow, while you're maybe writing those in, or maybe you already passed it because we took too long to deal with the chat, not to worry. Let's talk about what happened this last April, because this is the exciting part, because it's only going to get better. So, oh, and I see a bunch of examples, so thank you all. Yeah, counting bats while using live stream, awesome. Would it be per bat or just one instance of sitting there, maybe thinking about those things? Zooniverse projects, one classification per, yeah, absolutely. Contributing to a transcription or completing a review, yeah, would be an act of science. Every timed observation is an act for Frogwatch, totally, Carrie. I think that's what we did for Frogwatch last April. That sounds familiar. Cognitive games for dogs, I love that. So every game would be an act of science, maybe. Yeah. And for any of you who are lucky enough to be an affiliate or a SciStarter affiliate project, those acts of science are counted automatically too. So we don't necessarily have to try really hard to identify what that act of science would be too. All right, so Citizen Science Month 2024, what happened? How was it? Was it good? Yes, it was. We had over 1 million acts of science counted, and that was done from a range of different ways of calculating it to make sure that it was SciStarter community oriented and not pulling from groups that already get millions. I'm thinking specifically of like Zooniverse. Zooniverse projects gets like 2.5 million a month. And so we're really trying to push it into like a collective action of the SciStarter community, people gathering to do all kinds of citizen science and different types of acts of science. And so with that community, we had over 1 million acts of science. Actually, before the end of the month, we counted it in at like the 24th of April. And so this doesn't include all the folks who then went on later and did a lot of City Nature Challenge work at the end of the month. So it was a really successful first time run, which was very exciting. We had about 500,000 people from 126 different countries engaged and participating. 500,000 people counted from the acts of science calculation. And then the countries were engagement in total. So some of them, many of them did the acts of science. Some of them might have just been engaged in social media, et cetera. And about 1/3 of the participants we were able to track did more than one project. They did 2 or more. So folks don't compete, right? It's not about a competition between projects. It's more like giving the menu to the folks to be able to choose which ones they want to be a part of, and they will absolutely choose more than one. We saw 700 projects benefit from data contributions, and folks were happy. Participants were extremely likely to participate in more projects, and they would recommend citizen science to others. So it was altogether a very positive experience from what we could gather from our surveyed folks and from the data we were able to collect from the website and various other sources. So coming back also to the libraries idea, we have more than 800 libraries now. It's almost 1,000 libraries engaged in the community of practice for SciStarter and citizen science writ large. And with that community, they're receiving all this information about Citizen Science Month and projects to get involved in, like featured projects. And so we had over 250 events recorded, and many of which were through libraries, which was amazing to see how many libraries wanted to be engaged and bring people in during April as a way to spring into the spring and into the topic of citizen science and further into the summer when they're more engaged at libraries in general. We also had a lot of visibility on social media. We did a big push for using Citizen Science Month hashtags like 1 million acts of science as a hashtag, and we were shared to over 23 million followers, which is amazing. And I can't really fathom what that means exactly. That QR code will come back up, so no worries about scanning that right now. If you would like to know more, by the by, Tara's going to drop a link in the chat for the CitSci Month 2024 outcomes. It's a blog link that you can read more about what we accomplished as well. All right, so these are some examples of activities from last year. I'll just point out the calendar first. This is the SciStarter calendar, the interactive and shareable calendar that we sent out to everyone as a get involved. This is like the main public location to search for activities to do. And so this is going to come back up quite a bit. So in the top left-hand corner, if any of you were involved or went to go see the eclipse, there was a lot of media coverage about the eclipse, and we found out about the Philly Zoo had a nice article written about them where they hosted a zoo event, and they didn't even get in contact with us about the project that was hosted on SciStarter. They did a solar eclipse safari. So folks come to SciStarter and come to different variations of where these projects are posted, and just do it in their own communities without prompting. Folks want to do this to engage the public. And even though the animals were not impressed at the zoo, it was definitely a very exciting activity for all the visitors at the zoo to be able to do a bit of science while they were there. We also have online events where we partner with other groups and other project leaders to do bigger events to promote different projects and practice in real time. We did a 12-hour, consecutive 12 hours, Palooza for 1 million acts of science. That was me on, not nonstop, but I was off for a couple of various hours where I was talking with project leaders and doing projects. While we probably won't do another 12-hour version of that, I'm looking forward to doing another Zooniverse type marathon. So if you're on Zooniverse, keep an eye out. And so in addition to that, our partners also did programs, so including our ambassadors that already existed at the time. They were informal ambassadors, but they took their materials, really substantial materials, and went out and presented on behalf of citizen science projects, depending on what they were interested in learning and what the community asked to be taught about. We also had folks gather to do specific projects to celebrate Citizen Science Month and various different types of participation. This one was a naturalist group. And then we also have project leaders who created, just coincided naturally very well with April Citizen Science Month, but Stallcatchers has a partnership with Girl Scouts where they were pushing for participation in Stallcatchers to be able to receive a patch. And so this is that awesome patch they came up with. And it coincided really nicely to Citizen Science Month, so we could really push for more Girl Scouts to get involved during the month. So plenty of examples more than this. These are just the best pictures I have. So if you have thoughts and ideas, they are welcome, and I'm excited to hear them later. All right, so that was this past year. 2025 looks a little bit different, but pretty similar. So these are our goals for Citizen Science Month. We want to increase awareness of and participation in citizen science. That is an automatic benefit to you, right? We want people to be doing your projects. We also want to increase the capacity of facilitators and organizations to engage the public. So this means figuring out the best ways to provide support and provide materials and resources, et cetera, for facilitators to feel empowered to run these programs well and have no obstacles stopping them. And we're working a lot with our library program and our ambassadors to make that happen. Third, one more specific to you, we want to amplify the project outcomes made possible by participants. We really want to show citizen scientists what they're accomplishing in real time. And science doesn't always work like that, right? It takes a while for us to come up with answers and to come up with the end result of a study. And that's not what outcomes needs to mean. It can also mean the incremental things, the small things that happen. And so if you're thinking to yourself, I need a way to share the things that we are able to discover, the things that we're able to accomplish. That could even just be the type of data, the quantity of data that you are able to put together as a part of citizen scientists' effort. And so outcomes can mean a couple of things. It's a feedback loop to make sure that participants are feeling like they're a part of the bigger system. They're involved in science research and they're receiving proof and validation for that. And then number 4, we want to see an increase in project leader engagement in Citizen Science Month. This is why we're having this call. We would really love for you all to be a part of the picture. This has been going on for years where we want to showcase how awesome the volunteers are, but that can't happen without the projects, right? And we would love to see more presence from project leaders to really continue and grow in that interaction, expand the interaction between the volunteers and the world of scientific research, right? It's we get to be that window in for the volunteers. I say we like I'm a scientist. Sorry, you're the window in for me as well, just to clarify. All right, so that is all the goals. When it comes to actual participation, we want to make it easy to understand the various methods. There are so many methods and pathways to get involved, and so this is just a snippet of what's possible. We are very excited to see what you all can come up with if you're feeling creative about what you would like to do and what you would like to gain from this. And so we want you to take advantage of this push, this media coverage, this big push for awareness and enthusiasm to make sure we can increase participation in your project. Now, increasing participation, just a note here, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have 1 million volunteers as far as April. This could also just be that you have more prepared volunteers. They're more engaged with the network where you have really high quality data. Because as we know in some conversations, we're like, well, is this really good data coming from random individuals who are not scientifically trained? We have protocols, we train them. Taking advantage of Citizen Science Month to really push for those things and to really engage and give feedback means that participation is going to be better participation too. It doesn't have to land at just a bunch of people doing a lot of work that maybe not to the highest level of quality, although I bet all of it is, honestly. Now, in addition to the timing of it being a big push for availability of enthusiasm to kind of grab onto, we've noted a lot of things over time with our researchers at NCSU and a couple others who have come back and told us what we've seen from folks, and we know that event hosts and facilitators are reporting increased enthusiasm when there's subject matter experts. When they have subject matter experts, folks get way more excited to attend an event or to be able to ask questions. And so if you are available and willing to answer the call to be a subject matter expert, we know that is helpful. We also know that SciStarter members participate in multiple projects, which I alluded to earlier with the 1/3 doing 2 or more during Citizen Science Month. We've found that they don't stop at 1 or 2, they often do 3. And so on SciStarter. And so we want to make it clear, like there is a breadth of room for you all to be a part of this, and we want to make sure folks have the opportunity to do multiple projects. And facilitated approaches. So when we give these to librarians or ambassadors to actually facilitate, you end up with better prepared and more confident participation. So your volunteers will be confident. They'll be excited to ask questions that need to be asked and improve your project. We've had occasions where I've done a live event where a researcher was talking to the public about their project, and then months later when we met back up to do a similar event, they announced that they had made changes based on what they heard from their volunteers in that previous event. And so by interfacing with the public, this opportunity is a big deal because you can improve your own project, you can get more participation, and all the above that I had already said. All right, so what does that actually mean? What are the physical to-dos on the list of pathways to participation? First and foremost, we promote Citizen Science Month like crazy through SciStarter. And so if you add your project or event to SciStarter and make sure it's up to date and accurate, that is a step one that'll get you more than you are now, as far as volunteers and coverage goes. We also have a media toolkit to help promote Citizen Science Month and 1 Million Acts of Science on social media. We want you to be able to use that and push for more enthusiasm in the networks that you already have, and to gain more networks. If you're connected through the hashtags on ours and tag us, you get to see people from our side come over, or see our community come over and meet you all on your social medias. We also want to see how you can re-engage the existing participant bases and get them excited about Citizen Science Month and the collective goal for 1 million acts. This could mean just sending a message out via your email listserv to notify all of your volunteers about, hey, April's the time, get ready, let's start practicing now, and then let's aim for a goal of whatever that may be for your project. Maybe you want to see 10,000 analyses of your images. I'm trying to think of examples. Yeah, if you make up a goal and give it to your folks, it'll get them excited to re-engage and get really, really involved during the month. And so there are a lot of other things you can do. The bottom one right there is something I'll talk a little bit more about too. But if you become a featured project during Citizen Science Month by signing our Citizen Science Month pledge, project leader pledge, and report your acts of science, you can gain a lot more from working with us. And I'll show a bunch of those things in a moment here. And those two circles on the sides are two examples of ways in which you can engage with the publics from whatever method you want, whether or not you want to answer that call to be a subject matter expert and go to a local event near you or be a virtual subject matter expert. We love those things. We think that's great. Ambassadors will absolutely reach out about that. And so will librarians if you make yourself available. And then you can also host your own events. It's not as often that we see events come through project leaders, but it's not unheard of. And NASA Citizen Science in particular, a lot of those project leaders host their own office hours to just discuss the project and really push for that intercommunication, which is a big deal for those folks. A bunch of them are also a bunch of those volunteers have also led on to being bigger parts of the team for the science research. They've published papers with the team, et cetera. So there are ways to make it an event that fits your needs, and it's not necessarily a time suck for you. Also, for any of you who are a hyper local project, if you're on SciStarter, it doesn't, just to note, if you are a volunteer and go on SciStarter, the projects that will show up to you on the search are going to be the local ones first before they move on. So if you're hyper local and thinking like, well, I don't want to reach everyone, there are ways to engage with the specific localities that you're trying to reach to. And we can talk more about those resources as well if you want more information too. Okay. I gave you way too much information. I need a break to sip my tea. And so I have a question for you. Now that you know a lot of information that I've thrown at you and ways to participate, what do you hope your project will gain from participating? You signed up for this for a reason. What does that mean for you? And we're using Mentimeter actually. So I'm going to go ahead and click this. And in the chat, oh, thank you. Oh, that's the wrong one. Don't click the one from Tara, sorry. The menti.com/ and the short answer. If you click on that one, you can answer your questions here instead of in the chat. But if they get in the chat, we can also add them into the mix as well. And just to answer a quick question from a previous chat, we will be sharing the slides and the recording. So you'll get that in the registration or the follow-up email from this. And then I'm reading a message regarding re-engaging. How far in advance is it recommended to do this? I'm guessing the answer is that it depends on the project. Yes. And maybe particularly how much time the training takes. Oh, yeah, absolutely. So it definitely depends on the project. As far as preparing for April, I'm meeting with you all right now, and I'll explain a little bit more about this soon because my next page is actually next steps. But I'm formulating the big calendar, which actually, let me jump back to it really fast just so you can see it. This lovely calendar in the corner, 2025 is going to be larger and more room for more people and more activities. And I need to have a draft of that ready for libraries to look up by January. And so or at least that's the goal. And so a lot of what we're talking about right now and why we're talking right now is because the sooner you can do things, the sooner you can do the next steps if you want to be involved. Maybe you don't have all the details, that's totally fine. But just sharing your interest means that we can make sure you're included in the calendar and highlighted in different ways. And so yeah, there's a lot there. But that's why I'm talking to you now, and I'll also share the proposed the deadline for that so that we can get it out in January as a draft or a first version anyway. James in the chat asked about the media toolkit. It is ready. I will show you the link for it actually, Tara. It's just hidden. But we do have a media toolkit. It has a lot of information in it too. So it's not just for project leaders. It includes reference points for all kinds of folks looking at Citizen Science Month media. All right, I'm gonna jump back to where we were and see how many. Oh, yay, okay. Cool. Oh, I'm gonna sip a drink and then I will continue. In case you need to know. All right. What do you hope your project will gain? More dogs in our study. I love that. I hope so too. I'll add Rosie if I haven't already. More exposure and participation. Yes, exposure to new volunteers, more participation, getting volunteers that were already participating in other projects. Absolutely. As a project on SciStarter, you can actually see what other projects that your volunteers are involved in. So you can learn a little bit about like behaviors across the board too with your volunteers. Encouragement for people to submit their observations. Yes, it's not citizen science unless it's actually submitted back to y'all. National Moth Week is held on specific dates. I think it could be, I think this could get it back in people's minds a bit ahead of July. Totally. I'm very excited for that. Elena, I'm assuming, submitted that. We will be chatting. Inspire more people to engage with ocean science. Yes. Oh, I'm excited for Fathomverse. I've played it once and it's so pretty. The ability to connect with trained, knowledgeable participants. Breadth is not a challenge for us, but depth can be. Totally. Yeah, I'm glad you're seeing that. I would like to better train volunteers in our project, help prepare them to make more accurate measurements. Totally. Yes, this is your opportunity to get those folks engaged in ways that are very quality and valuable data driven. Encouragement for promote citizen science and social media. Yeah, absolutely. You can gain more of a following that way too. As I mentioned, 23 million followers were able to see the post for 1 million acts, which is a lot of people. A lot of people. All right, cool. I'll scroll down just in case I missed one. Train. Cool. Yeah, these are all great. Thank you all for responding to that. Awesome. Yay. Oh, and Jennifer added Leo, the doggo, into your project too, Susan. I think it was Susan. Sorry. Okay. All right. So next steps. So now we can talk about a bit more of the deadlines and the benefits of what we're going to give back to you, because we do want this to be a full partnership. We're not asking you to do a bunch of work for us. This is a for us, big picture us type of situation. We created a pledge that is for project leaders to be able to submit their ideas of how they want to engage and how they anticipate engaging in order to be involved, which includes when you might want to be promoted throughout the month of April. And so it includes like a request for what dates you'd like to be promoted. But in addition to that, which is this big thing that I posted once again, there's a lot of other resources that we want to make accessible to you. So a customizable media toolkit, which will be sent out to you actually with the pledge on December 13th. I'll make sure it's sent out to everyone. You can search for the kit in the Citizen Science Month resources webpage as well, which we can drop a link for. In addition to that, we have marketing materials so you can host your own event or you can promote events or virtual programs in general. In April, you'll have your project featured on Well-Made Access Science and SciStarter.org. It'll keep rounding up to the top if you are featured and signed the pledge and are part of that bigger group or a part of that group. And so you'll get a lot more visibility there. You'll be included in SciStarter's social media calendar and the interactive April calendar. So our social media is based on how we define that calendar along with other parts as well. And so we'll make sure that you're included in there. And a push out to our facilitator population. So we have that large library network of about 1,000 libraries that are ready to listen for what projects they should be doing. And so that information will be sent out to them, and your project will be sent to them as a reference.
Well, and Emma, I just put in
Yeah.
the chat that speaking of libraries, they love turnkey materials, and we've been developing a lot for different projects. And so if you have an idea for an event that a library might be able to host, we can help you create like an event recipe card. And then we'll push that out to the library network, and that just makes it easy for them to understand like what are the goals of the event, what materials do they need. Are there slides that you can share? So if there's any event resources specific to your project, we can definitely get those out to the library network.
Yes, double yes. That is awesome. Yeah, in our event recipe cards that Tara mentioned, we have a set of projects where we created a two slide deck that's just a understanding what the project is, the background of what you need to do beforehand, and then the second slide is how to do an event. So like what you start with, what you do in the middle, which is usually the project itself, the reflection at the end. And we are looking to expand that library of event recipe cards. And so
Hey,
if you
guess what? You don't need to put HTTPS anymore in Zoom.
that is nice. Yeah, that worked. Yeah, so
I
you can jump
just
over to
put it
that
in.
link.
I was like, oh darn, I didn't put it in correctly. And it works. But that's a link to where you can find the resources.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, and those are a bunch of examples of event recipes too, Sophie. If you jump over to that link, you'll see a set of 5 or 6, I think. I think it's 5 on that page. Yeah. Also, if you sign up on our pledge, I'll be sending you a free t-shirt. Just a note, over on this corner here, several of you actually, I think, I'm not sure if any of them are online, but several of the project leaders from last year received t-shirts for some extra work they did with us. And so we were really excited to see them repping their 1 million Acts of Science t-shirts during the month. And so we want to make sure that's available to everyone. So if you sign up assuming there's not 1,000 of you I have to send t-shirts to, which I don't think there will be. But as many as we can get for a t-shirt, I'm excited to send that your way. We'll also make available custom data analytics. So if you're on SciStar already, you have access to that, but we'll do like a end of April push out to all of you of what the data is from SciStarter. And recognize that SciStarter is like a microcosm of the volunteer environment. So you probably have plenty other volunteers who are not necessarily connected. We would love it if you promoted 1 million Acts of Science as a way to get them connected so we can give you a bigger picture. But it does give you an idea of what the traction is and what the participation is like from volunteers who are signed up for SciStar where they're in the community and they want to do more. What am I missing on here? Oh, we have a partnership with Discover Magazine, and so we do cross-post our newsletters and a lot of our promotions, and so they'll also be able to access, or we'll also be able to push it out to their audience as well. And I don't think I'm missing anything else on here. If you're curious about the media toolkit too, a lot of that is like materials to template your social media posts to. Like we're trying to make it as easy as humanly possible. And so if you see a reason or a need for something else that would make things even easier, feel free to reach out and I will work on making that happen. Oh, and lastly, when we get to May, we would love to do a end of Citizen Science Month happy hour with project scientists to just get to know each other and celebrate what was accomplished because you deserve it, and we want to celebrate what work is done during the month of April, and so you can look forward to that as well. Okay, I don't think I'm missing anything, but Tara, do you want to mention anything else?
I'm trying to think. I mean,
There's more on the pledge
well,
document,
yeah, go on the resources page on SciStarter, Citizen Science Month resources, and you can take a look there.
Right. I did forget one thing. So at the very bottom here, which is why I forgot, and personalized support from SciStarter team. If you do sign the pledge, we will be more on track with like working with you independently too for what you want to accomplish. So in the occasion of the National Moth Week group, because I started with the conversation earlier with them, because I want to do an International Moth Night during April, that'll be a more intensive partnership to figure out what to do there. And so if you just want assistance and like and just want to use our resources and not talk to anyone, that's fine too. But you can also work with us to really come up with something bigger if you would like to make a bigger splash in your participation in Citizen Science Month. What should we do and or expect after signing the pledge? Are there ever other steps we should take to get more involved? Thank you for asking that question. After the pledge is sent out, I'll be sending an email out after December 13th to just say hello to all of you who have signed the pledge and give you more information and give you like exact links everywhere where you could just like save a document to go back to. The other steps to be involved will come after we can figure out what the calendar looks like, but rather what you are wanting to be involved in is based on how extensive you want to. What is the best phrasing for that? I'm sorry. It is kind of up to you what your steps are. We will give you like recommendations on like, okay, let's start promoting on social media, for example. Like we have a schedule we will share with you all on like when things are starting to ramp up, so we can basically cross promote at the same along the same schedule and such. And if you're doing a bigger event or co-hosting an event with us, that would involve more preparation, more steps in that way. But it's not necessarily that it just kind of depends on what you would like to do too. So Lily, that more information will come with that as well. Another question here. I have a winter project. Are there ways to promote before April, especially particularly with libraries? Georgia, yes, totally. If you want to actually send us an email, info@SciStarter, yeah, or library network at SciStarter, that's perfect. Yeah. Yeah, if you're a specific like time period of the year, that's totally fine. You might not be able to say, hey, let's go and do this project right now, but sometimes that means you can do gatherings about outcomes and such. And so that would still act as an act of science or count as an act of science. So if you want to host a virtual party where you celebrate the results from the previous winter, that's a good example of what can be accomplished during April as well. But yeah, Georgia, we will definitely do that before then too. Yeah. You said 126 countries were involved this year. Is everything exclusively English-based? How were projects from non-Anglophile, Anglophone studies involved, engaged? That's a great question. I don't have details for every country because our data tracking does not support that kind of in-depth understanding. But I can say that we had a very strong like internet presence, and so it was a lot of just grabbing people where they were. So if it seemed of interest, they were looking at it, and there's like website translation. So it could be that they were only looking at it through the website and looking for items that were specific to their languages too. We have partnered this year and are trying to create a bigger network between the various regions of the world. So Citizen Science Asia, CitSci Africa, the European Citizen Science Association, we're in conversation with them to try to make sure we can cover our bases for languages and access it within like reasonable region too. So we're still in conversation. I'm not sure what that will look like in April, but we do have more than just English resources. There's a lot of projects on SciStarter that might be in like Spanish, for example. Some of them are in Latin America, South America, and so on. And so there's the occasional one that will be on SciStarter that is in a different language, but we're not purposefully pushing for only English. It's just whatever is available. Some of our resources are in multiple languages. One example, which is the strongest example from our libraries, our library citizen science kits, there's one that has translated activities into Spanish and also Navajo. So we have some examples, but it's not comprehensive, and we want more. So if your project actually uses a lot of different language resources, feel free to share them with us too, because that's always something we want to improve on. Because there's always more we could be doing there. Question about how to define an act of science. Project is on Zooniverse, so it makes sense to count one act as one classification. Yeah, I agree. But would asking a question on our talk boards, oh my gosh, yes, I would love that. If you're willing to count talk boards, or if there's a way to like count them really quickly of how many people, how many comments are made in conversation, that would be a great thing to include. I would love that. I think that's very smart. Do you have cancer centers involved in this? I'm not personally connected to any currently, but I would love to include them. There are quite a few projects actually that deal with cancer survival and health research that would be relevant. And so, Jackie, if you want to connect on that, we absolutely can. Let me check the time. Okay, so since we're running low on time, I will look through these. I just want to make sure. Okay, yeah, I'm going to skip to the next page. So if you want to submit, if you want to do the pledge, this is also a QR code here for you. You can also email me with any questions. The deadline to submit is on December 13th. It's written on the form. If you reach out to me and say you need more time, feel free, or like, please do. But for now, the December 13th will be the date to be the date. And I also we had a good group on the pledge before this event because they'd already worked with us. So I'm very excited to see them already excited to get started. Awesome. All right, I'm going to switch, or actually one last question, then I'm going to pass the mic over to Jennifer for another conversation about AAPS. look forward to. So a lot of questions were asking about some of these things, but I am curious if anything else has come up in your mind of what barriers might still exist for you, so we can address those before we get closer to April. So nice. I just dropped the Menti link. The pledge link I can get to as well. Here.
I put it in there earlier and then I recopied the wrong link.
Okay.
I'm not a good link bank
You're doing great. I
locator
appreciate
today,
you.
sorry.
We love it. I wonder what that is. No one click it.
No, it's the recipe cards.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, because I had them copied from before. Those are the recipe cards up, if you want to take a look.
Okay.
Actually, it is the pledge. It's just a
Oh,
long,
it's just in
it's
the
a very long link to the pledge.
Okay, gotcha. All right, I will move forward then. Well, if you have thoughts on barriers, feel free to drop them in the chat or in the Menti. I'll read both. But I do want to make sure that Jennifer has enough time to talk about CAPS 2025. So after Citizen Science Month, Jennifer is going to be taking us all to Portland. No, sorry, I'll pass it to you instead of saying anything else.
Hey, thanks, Emma. And thanks so much to SciStarter for promoting and organizing this event and everyone's projects. We're really pleased to have a strong partner with SciStarter and to be allies in advancing this work of science that's done in partnership with members of the public, and where SciStarter really excels at facilitating those projects. We point to and engage people around best practices. And a year ago, when I worked on a similar webinar with Darlene, we talked about one of those best practices being published research saying that events are a great way to bolster project participation and affinity and quality. That research also, and this is going back to 2018, that research also showed that there's a sunk cost. It costs money to put on an event. And what SciStarter is doing here is they are taking on a lot of that cost of giving you the tools that you need to reach those volunteers and mobilize energy all at once so that you can focus your attention and time on doing your research or engaging your volunteers or providing that best experience, understanding those experiences. And when you do that, we would love for you to share your research and your learnings at the Conference for Advancing Participatory Sciences, or any of our other forums that the association puts out there. We'll be convening people in person in Portland, Oregon, the end of May. The call for talks and presentations has just opened the end of last week. We would love to see any or all of you there. It's a great space for people who come from all different disciplines and all different sectors, researchers, librarians, education specialists, evaluators, nature centers, everybody it takes to make these projects thrive. And it's a perfect space to be sharing your work and learning from others in a really generative and positive and inspiring environment. So please do check it out, consider joining us, and I look forward to connecting with many of you there. Thanks again, Emma, and really excited to be helping to support and promote 1,000,000 Acts of Science again this year.
Yay, thank you. I'm excited to go to Portland. Woohoo. Meet me there. Yes, awesome. I'm excited for everything that's happening in the spring. It'll be really fun. And thank you so much for joining us to talk about those things. For any of you who want to do a presentation, I'm a big fan, and I hopefully will be adding something to the list for the call for presentations too. About you all. No. All right, and with that, my last slide is just a thank you. So I'm going to go back to this slide for anyone who still needs it, and just do a quick check for questions and any other information that